Hello and welcome to the Success Showcase. I'm your host Eric Lopkin with the Modern Observer Group, and with me as always is Chip Januszewski from the Happiness and Success GPS. Chip, how you doing this week?
Positively great today, Eric. How about you?
I'm doing fantastic. We are wrapping up January, moving into a new month. Yeah, the new year is underway and things are going well.
Yep, they are. There's a lot of positive things going on out there, and so obviously it's a great time to talk about stuff like that.
Absolutely. And what we're going to talk about today is the reasoning behind self improvement, ways to do it, and why it pays to be a lifelong learner. And, I know so many people that hear that phrase and they just back away because when you say learner, they immediately think back to the classroom. And, and a lot of them, you know, they're still thinking about a high school classroom going, no, I don't ever want to go back to that.
Yeah, I mean, basically, the nice thing about everything that we have out there today, I mean, as far as going back to the classroom, that's a long, long time ago. Now, what we're talking about today is self studies, and you control everything as far as that goes. What the topic is, how you do it, and that kind of thing. So it's just really, really important to do that. And it's a lot of fun too. And there's so many different ways that you can do it. Some people out there might think, oh, I'm not going to read every day and so on and so forth, or I'm not going to do this, or I'm not going to do that. But these days, it's as easy as listening to a podcast like this or going on a website and typing in something in a search and so on. So it's really, really easy to do. But the most important thing is to just get in the habit of doing it.
Absolutely. And, even if it's just a matter of picking up a book or listening to an audio book, doing it on a regular basis really does push you and it gets you in a great mindset. Every year I make the resolution that I'm going to read 50 books that year. And usually I do a bit more. This year, I actually decided I'm going to push a little harder, and I decided I'm going to do 100 books this year. And so far, I'm on pace to do that. But even listening to different books, and I've done so far 5 books this year. Um, some of which were new to me, some of which I'm listening to again. But when you listen, either taking in the new information or being reminded of things you already knew but may have forgotten, it's amazing the connections that you start making in your head. And this is actually a problem with today's world because instead of learning things, most people are just looking them up. So when you look something up in Google and then, you use it, you forget about it, you're not making these connections and seeing patterns in the world, seeing how different things relate. And that's something that, aside from being great for your mindset and fantastic to energize you, it also makes you aware of patterns that happen. And for example, I just read a book called The Boys of Winter, and this was all about the 1980 U.S. Olympic hockey team. Now, we've got the Winter Olympics coming up, so I thought that it was a great time to read that book. And of course, I remember watching the game, most of us do. But what struck me was the description of the United States at the time. And honestly, if you changed Afghanistan for Ukraine and Carter for Biden, I was struck by the fact that they could have been describing the world now. And of course, had I not read this book, I would never have seen that pattern. So you get different insights even on things that you don't expect to.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's amazing looking back. I forgot about that part of it. I just thought about how great it
Yeah.
was to finally beat the Russians. Which is basically like the New York Yankees playing my alma mater, Providence College, which doesn't even have a baseball team anymore in baseball and losing. And so it's just so amazing doing that. I mean, one of the things that I like a lot as far as subject matter goes and just going in and searching around is about 3 or 4 years ago, I got off of my direct TV program and I went to YouTube TV. And so I mean, I use that for my regular TV, but with that, I got the YouTube itself, which I'd never used hardly at all on a computer, but now I have it on the big screen TV. And I watch that more than anything else because it's so easy to use and it's all topic driven. I mean, basically, you can go in there and they have a menu so you can look up different interests, sports, news, everything else in there, but you can type in a search phrase and you can come up with things that way. One of the best things you can do is put them in your library so you can go back and watch things again. But I find myself using that all the time. I mean, if you are interested, those of you folks out there, about how things were back then, there's a series out there right now, and I forget exactly what the name of it is, but it's just a year in review, 8 minutes, year to year, and I think it started like around 51 or 52, which was right before that I was born. And I just go in there, they're 8 minute segments, and I go back and kind of reminisce about all the stuff that's going on there. These are the type of things that you can do. I mean, if you want to go back and search out a time period or topics and so on and so forth, and it's not just YouTube, I just use that myself, but there's all kinds of other places out there to do that. And that can develop interest for you so that if you want to go out and get a book or an audio book and read more about that, it's all there. But if you want a resource to start with, just go to a YouTube or other types of things and start um, listing topics before you go in there, but start just researching them and see what you come up with. Because right now, the whole world is a library in so many different ways. And there's no way that you can't, if you want to do it, put in 10, 15 minutes, a half an hour a day in something that interests you, and it will grow on you for sure. I guarantee it.
Oh, certainly. And you're talking about YouTube, but at this point, streaming services in general have become an amazing resource for documentaries. I know Disney Plus has the National Geographic channels and National Geographic documentaries. HBO Max has the Smithsonian Channel and their documentaries. Netflix has done a ton of original documentaries. And it's amazing the topics that you can find out about. It's not even just things that you would think about, hey, I want to look this up. One day, we were just going through Netflix documentaries and we watched one documentary called Bathtubs Over Broadway. And it was the story of corporate musicals that were done at trade shows or corporate retreats, things like that. And I mean, it was hysterical. But it was a whole aspect of performance and, sales process that I had never seen anything about. And we followed that up with a documentary that started about kung fu movies, but the documentary actually tracked the influence of these kung fu movies into things like hip hop, rap, breakdancing. And it was just amazing to watch this because we've all seen the old kung fu movies, but never realized what a cultural impact they had. So you can always just find these new things and new ways of looking at things that you thought you knew about.
Yeah, this Bathtubs Over Broadway. I just wrote that one down. That's in Netflix, and that sounds so cool because I mean I've done some musicals and stuff like that myself, not as a star, but just because I love to do it in community theater. But that's fantastic. And yes, Disney Plus, Netflix, I have those too. And one of the neat things about that is when you go in there, if you're just thinking, what do I want to do? The first thing that they come up with is suggested lists and what's hot, what's interesting, and so on and so forth. And something is bound to catch your interest there. And you mentioned documentaries. I mean, basically, if you just think of Netflix and Disney as full length movies and so on and so forth, there's a whole lot of shorter stuff in there too. And
Oh
Disney
yeah.
Plus and National Geographic. I mean, there's all kinds of things that you can do in those. And again, you build your own list. You go back. There's a whole lot of series on there um, where you can get just pick out a topic and learn everything you can about that in a 6-part series over a few hours. I mean, recently, those of you folks who are interested, talking about Disney Plus, in the Beatles, they had a three
Yep.
day series about how they did their last couple of sessions, the Let It Be, and it was just amazing. This is back when everybody thought that, well, they were in the process of breaking up. But this is studio sessions, conversations, all about their lives and so on and so forth. And me watching them originally on Ed Sullivan, I mean, that was just glued to the TV for a couple of days to watch those. So, I mean, the topics on there are great. And obviously, especially Disney Plus, they're putting more of that kind of stuff on there as well as in the theaters. So, it's really, really neat looking at that stuff.
Yeah, and something to remember about lifelong learning is it doesn't have to be a topic that you're pushing yourself through. I mean, I happen to like documentaries about quantum physics, but those are not everybody's cup of tea. But you can find these things like you just said, the Beatles or the kung fu movies, or it doesn't have to be an academic subject. It can just be something that's of interest.
Yeah, and I mean, we talk as far as personal development side of things. I mean, obviously, we always talk about positive mindset, and this is one of the ways to keep your mindset positive is by exposing yourselves to things that you're interested in. But we also, as part of your whole personal package, the person in the mirror, talking about personal strategic planning for all parts of your life. Obviously, you spend probably most of your life doing your job. However, there's so many different other things that you can be doing. And especially if you don't like your job, sit down and figure out what you do like to do and start researching that too. I mean, you can get information about that, you can make connections, and all that too. So it's really important to kind of put the whole thing in perspective because the bottom line is, we talk about if you want to be happy and successful, you have to take care of that person in the mirror first, and that starts with just writing down a list of things that you're good at, that you're interested in, all the different things that you've done wonderful in your life, that kind of thing, and just exposing yourself to more of that and putting things in perspective. Obviously, your job is a big part of it because it's going to facilitate you being able to afford Disney Plus. But it's really, really important to do this.
Absolutely. And it's part of a successful mindset. There you can pick up a number of books about mindset, and most of them will at some point talk about the concept of a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. And in a nutshell, the difference between those mindsets is a fixed mindset. You believe everything is as it is. There's nothing you can do to change it. It's just the luck of the draw. Whereas a growth mindset is that there's always something more you can do. You can learn new skills, you can learn new items. It's never too late to keep learning and apply those lessons to your life. And again, you really should be thinking outside of the box on some of these things because, it's not just a business book that can help you in your job. You can be watching a documentary about, as I said, the Olympic hockey team or Navy SEALs. And there's always lessons that can be taken from history and from these things that you can go, oh, I can apply this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, sometimes if you're just watching regular movies about things, most of them have like good stories that are in them. And it subconsciously or very consciously shows you how people face their problems and they come out of it just by building relationships or working with people. It's so, so important to do that. And most of the good stuff out there has some bit of that in there that's working on you subconsciously while you're looking at the topic that interests you.
Absolutely. And